My daughter-in-law announced in front of a whole backyard full of guests that starting immediately, I'd be watching her 5 kids every single weekend. For free. Because supposedly, I didn't have a life of my own anymore. My son stepped up right beside her and added a threat of his own. Then don't expect any help from us either. All I said was deal. The very next morning, I had the locks changed and canceled the monthly payments on their car. My daughter-in-law, Chloe, was standing in the backyard with a glass of lemonade, loudly announcing to all our guests that from now on, my weekends belonged to her. It was a beautiful, sunny Saturday afternoon, and my son, Jason, had invited everyone over for a backyard BBQ. 5 kids were running wild across the lawn, screaming and throwing toys everywhere. I was sitting quietly on a bench sipping my water. Chloe clinked a fork against her glass to get everyone's attention. "Hey everyone, we've got some great news, Jason, and I really need some more time to ourselves. So starting this weekend, Grandma is going to be watching our 5 kids. Free of charge, obviously, it's not like she has a life of her own anyway." A few of the guests chuckled awkwardly. Others looked over at me, waiting to see what I'd do. Chloe didn't ask me. She dictated it. My son Jason stood right beside her, nodding in agreement. He crossed his arms and stared at me. I didn't say a word. I could feel everyone's eyes burning into me. Jason leaned down and whispered, though he made sure it was loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "If you refuse, Mom don't expect us to be there when you need help." I looked up at him. My own son, the boy I had raised, was using my future as a bargaining chip. I didn't feel angry, just an ice-cold clarity. I set my glass down on the patio table. "Deal," I said, calmly. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked away. They thought I had caved. They thought I was just the easiest, most convenient solution to their chaotic lives. As I pulled the garden gate shut behind me, I could hear Chloe laughing triumphantly. I didn't speed up my pace. I wasn't running away. I took a leisurely stroll back to my house, which was just a few blocks down the road. Once I got inside, I took a deep breath. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked straight into my home office, opened my desk drawer, and pulled out my bank statements. They had absolutely no idea what my deal actually meant. That was the exact moment I stopped being their convenient ATM and their permanent backup plan. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe: "Bring fresh bagels over tomorrow morning." I switched my phone to silent. This weekend was going to look very different. That very evening, I called a locksmith and booked him for the first thing the next morning. I needed the lock on my front door changed. For years, Jason and Chloe had a spare key. Originally, it was just meant for emergencies. But, in reality, Chloe used it as a free pass to dump the kids in my hallway whenever she felt like running to the mall. I had put up with it countless times just to keep the peace. Those days were officially over. The locksmith showed up right on time. Within 20 minutes, I had 3 shiny new keys sitting in the palm of my hand. I tossed the old one straight into the trash. It was just a tiny piece of metal, but it meant my front door was finally mine again. After that, I went into the kitchen and completely emptied the large bottom pantry cabinet. Up until then, it had been stuffed to the brim with candy, expensive juices, and snacks for the grandkids. I bought all of those things out of my retirement savings because Chloe constantly complained that money was tight at the end of the month. I packed everything into 2 large cardboard boxes. I wasn't throwing it out. I was donating it to the local daycare center. From now on, my house was no longer a free grocery store. I filled the empty shelves with things I actually enjoyed: good herbal teas, dark chocolate, and a few nice bottles of wine. My space, my rules. I looked around the kitchen and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. No tears, no self-pity. I had played my part for long enough. That afternoon, I sat out on the patio and read a book. My phone was lighting up nonstop. Jason and Chloe were sending me lists of what the kids were allowed to eat this weekend and what activities I needed to plan. I read through every single message carefully, but I didn't reply. I wasn't going to give them a heads up. They had laid down their absolute facts, so I was going to do the exact same thing. I made myself a simple dinner and soaked in the absolute silence. No screaming kids, no demanding daughter-in-law. Just me and the soft evening breeze. I knew tomorrow afternoon was going to be loud, but I was ready for it. More than ready. It was Friday, 5:30 p.m. This was the exact time Chloe usually called to announce she was on her way over. This time, she didn't call. She just assumed everything was going exactly according to her plan. I was standing in my bedroom, packing a small weekender bag. I had booked a last-minute room at a beautiful spa resort up by the lake about an hour's drive away. I packed a good book, some cozy lounge clothes, and a swimsuit. At 5:45 p.m., I heard the unmistakable rumble of their massive family minivan pulling into my driveway. Car doors slammed and a chorus of kids' voices started shouting all at once. I locked my front door, slipped out the back, got into my little compact car parked behind the house, and quietly drove away down the side street. Glancing in my rearview mirror, I could see Chloe marching up to my front porch with two of the kids by the hand. About 20 minutes later, out on the highway, my phone started ringing. Chloe. I let it ring. 2 minutes later, Chloe again. Then Jason. I didn't answer. At a red light, I quickly typed out a message in the family group chat. Headed out of town for the weekend. Have a great time, you guys. The reply came almost instantly. Out of town. We're standing on your porch. You said it was a deal. My key doesn't work. I read the text, smiled softly to myself, and powered my phone completely off. No arguments. No justifying myself. I had agreed to their terms that I shouldn't expect any help from them if I refused their demands. The fact that I had actually refused the demands was something they were only just now figuring out. When I arrived at the resort, I checked in peacefully. I ordered room service and treated myself to a long, hot bath. No guilt trips, no chaos, just warm water and the scent of lavender. I knew it was absolute pandemonium back at their house. 5 kids on a Friday night, 0 preparation, and a furious mother. But that wasn't my problem anymore. That night, I slept deeper and more soundly than I had in years. Saturday morning, after a huge breakfast, I was sitting out on the balcony of my hotel room. I had finally turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with 47 missed calls and a flood of text messages. Jason was livid. "Mom, this isn't funny." Chloe is crying. "We had concert tickets," Chloe chimed in. "You selfish woman, you ruined our marriage." I read through all of it calmly. Not a single message asked how I was doing. It was entirely about the loss of their own convenience. I set the phone aside and opened my laptop. I logged into my online banking. There was one more piece of business I needed to take care of. That massive family van they had rolled into my driveway with yesterday. It was in my name. Jason and Chloe hadn't qualified for the financing a few years ago. I had leased the car for them, and every single month I dutifully paid the $650 installment. Back then, Chloe swore up and down they would reimburse me every month. That happened exactly twice. After that, I never saw a dime. I clicked over to the automatic payments tab. There it was. A huge chunk of money draining from my fixed income every single month. I clicked delete. One simple click and the financial umbilical cord was cut. I drafted a short. Purely factual email to Jason. Since I am no longer providing free childcare, I need my money for myself. Starting next month, I will no longer be paying the lease on your car. You have 4 weeks to transfer the financing into your own names, or I am returning the vehicle to the dealership. I closed the laptop. It felt like I had just dropped a 100-pound backpack. For years, I had tried to buy their love and approval through financial support. I truly believed that keeping the family together meant giving them everything I had. But they didn't see me as a mother or a grandmother. They saw me as a free 24/7 service provider. I walked down to the lake and took a long, quiet stroll. The crisp air felt amazing. My son's threats from the barbecue now seemed so incredibly small and hollow. I didn't need their help. I just needed my own peace. I got back home on Sunday afternoon feeling completely rejuvenated. I had barely set my travel bag down in the hallway when someone started aggressively leaning on the doorbell. I knew exactly who it was. I opened the door just a crack, keeping the heavy security chain firmly in place. Jason and Chloe were standing on the porch, their faces flushed bright red with anger. "What is the meaning of this?" "Mom," Jason immediately shouted. "The new locks. The car. Have you lost your mind?" I looked at him calmly. "I haven't lost my mind. I'm just cleaning up my life." Chloe pushed her way to the front. "You said it was a deal in front of everyone in the backyard. You completely humiliated us." "No, Chloe," I replied, not raising my voice even a fraction. "You humiliated me. You ordered my time around like I was the hired help. All I said was that I agreed to Jason's condition, no help from you guys, if I didn't do exactly what you wanted. I made my choice. You can't just take the car away from us. How are we supposed to get the kids to school?" she screamed. "That is your job as parents," I said matter-of-factly. "I paid for that car for 3 years. You've had plenty of time to get yourselves on solid financial ground. The auto pay is canceled." Jason stared at me like he was looking at a total stranger. The passive, silent mother who always just took it on the chin was no longer standing in front of him. "You're being incredibly selfish," he muttered. "If taking care of myself is selfish, then I wear the badge proudly. My house, my money, my time. If you want to visit me, call ahead. Without an appointment, this door does not open." I shut the door in their faces before they could get another word out and slid the deadbolt into place. I could hear Jason smack the wood with his hand, but after a few minutes they gave up, and I listened to their footsteps crunching away on the gravel driveway. I walked into the kitchen and put the kettle on for tea. My heart was beating a little faster than normal, but I didn't feel an ounce of fear. Just a deep, unwavering certainty that I had done the right thing. 2 weeks went by. The quiet in my house was absolutely glorious. I had replanted my flower beds and spent my evenings reading peacefully on the back porch. Jason and Chloe hadn't reached out. They were probably banking on the idea that I would cave and come begging to see the grandkids. But I held my ground. I missed the kids terribly, but I knew that giving in now would ruin everything I had built. On a Wednesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. It wasn't Jason or Chloe. It was my oldest grandson, 12-year-old Leo. I opened the door immediately. He was standing there with his little backpack looking nervous and out of place. "Grandma, can I come in?" I smiled warmly. "Of course, sweetheart. Come on in." He walked purposefully into the kitchen, heading straight for the big pantry cabinet where all the junk food used to be. He pulled the door open and just stared blankly at the boxes of oatmeal and varieties of tea. "Where's all the candy?" he asked, totally confused. I don't keep that stuff here anymore, Leo. If you're hungry, I can make you a turkey sandwich or slice up an apple. He scrunched up his face. Mom told me to come over here and get something to eat. We don't have anything good in the fridge at home. And there it was. Chloe was still trying to use the kids to save a buck. She figured I'd never say no to my grandson and that I'd immediately run out to restock the pantry for them. I made Leo a healthy sandwich and poured him a glass of milk. We sat down together at the kitchen table. Your mom needs to go grocery shopping if you guys don't have food. Grandma isn't a supermarket anymore. He chewed his food in silence. He was plenty old enough to understand that the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Can I just stay here for the afternoon? It's so loud at my house. I looked at him. My heart softened, but my boundaries stayed firmly in place. You can stay for 1 hour today. Then you need to head back home. And I want you to tell your mom something for me. Tell her not to send you to do her dirty work when she has a problem. He nodded. I loved him to pieces, but I absolutely refused to let Chloe use him as a pawn. The first of the month rolled around. This was the day the heavy lease payment for the family minivan usually drained out of my checking account. This time, nothing happened. My bank balance stayed comfortably padded. A week later, I looked out the window and saw Jason pulling into the driveway in a beat-up, older, compact sedan. The massive minivan was gone. Apparently, the dealership wasn't messing around once the payment bounced and Chloe refused to take over the lease. I watched through the kitchen window as Jason wrestled with the back seat, violently trying to cram 3 bulky car seats into the tiny space. He was sweating, cursing, and slamming his hands against the door frame in total frustration. Chloe was standing on the lawn, gesturing wildly at him. In the old days, I would have run out there in a heartbeat. I would have offered to help pressed cash into their hands and assured them everything was going to be okay. Today, I just stood at the window and sipped my coffee. It was their choice to have 5 kids. It was their responsibility to figure out the logistics of their own lives. Late that afternoon, my phone rang. Jason, I answered. Mom, he said, his voice strained and tight. We surrendered the van. Are you happy now? This isn't about my happiness, Jason. It's about your responsibilities, I answered evenly. You put us in a terrible position. We can't even take the whole family to the grocery store at the same time. You could have taken over the lease. I gave you 4 weeks' notice. With what money, he yelled. Chloe doesn't work and my paycheck doesn't cover everything. Then you need to sit down and rethink your budget. I paid for that car for 3 years. You're welcome. I waited for a thank you. It never came. Instead, he just hung up on me. I set the phone back on its cradle. No guilt, just reality. They had to learn the hard way that life costs money and that a grandmother is not an ATM. I walked out into the hallway and put on my shoes. I had just signed up for a pottery class, something I had been dying to do for 10 years, but never had the time or the extra cash for. I was really starting to like my new life. It was a chilly, crisp fall morning when Jason tried to turn the tables one last time. He showed up at my door completely unannounced. I unlocked the door but left the chain hooked. He looked absolutely exhausted. Deep, dark bags hung under his eyes. Mom let me in. We need to talk. I undid the chain, opened the door, led him into the kitchen, and offered him a chair. He sank into it heavily. We can't keep doing this, he started. Chloe is completely overwhelmed. The kids are constantly fighting. We desperately need a weekend to ourselves. Just this once, Mom. Please. I studied him closely. He sounded desperate, but he didn't sound remorseful. It was never just this once, Jason. It was constant. You both took advantage of my generosity. Chloe treated me like an unpaid maid in front of all your friends. His expression darkened. That familiar, arrogant entitlement crept right back in. You're just holding a grudge. You know what? If you don't help us out right now, we are cutting you out of our lives completely. You will never see those kids again. You're going to die alone. There it was. The classic blackmail. The emotional baseball bat they had used to beat me into submission for years. I leaned back in my chair and looked him dead in the eye. I didn't smile, but I didn't flinch either. Jason. I am already getting older, and what I've learned over these past few weeks is that being alone is infinitely better than being used. If you're willing to cut me off from my own grandchildren simply because I refuse to be your free, full-time nanny, then that tells me exactly what my true value is to you. He stared at me totally speechless. He fully expected me to break down in tears and cave. It's your choice. But I am absolutely done being threatened. I stood up and walked over to the kitchen door, holding it open. You need to leave now. He got up slowly, his mouth hanging slightly open. He had played his trump card, and he had lost. Without another word, he walked out of my house. I closed the door behind him and took a deep breath. I had just faced my worst fear and survived. 2 months went by. Complete radio silence. No phone calls, no pop-in visits. I just lived my life. I met up with my girlfriends, went to the theater, and spent hours tending to my garden. On a rainy Tuesday night, my phone started ringing off the hook. It was a little after 8. I glanced at the screen. Chloe. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. Then a frantic text came through from Jason. Mom, please pick up. It's an emergency. The car broke down. We're stranded on the interstate, Chloe, and the kids are freezing. An emergency. My very first instinct was to jump up, grab my car keys, and rush to the rescue. Just like I always did. But I caught myself. I thought about Chloe's smug announcement in the backyard. I thought about Jason's vicious threats. I knew that if I drove out there tonight, I'd be sucked right back into my old role. Instead, I picked up the phone and called AAA. I gave the roadside assistance dispatcher all the info and sent a tow truck out to the mile marker Jason had texted me. I paid the dispatch fee over the phone with my credit card. Then I opened Jason's message. I didn't reply with panic or scolding. I just typed one single line. The tow truck is paid for and on its way to you guys. Love, Mom. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. Jason. This time, I picked up. You're not on your way, he shouted hysterically. We need someone to come get the kids. We can't all legally fit in the cab of the tow truck. I'm sorry to hear that, Jason, but I'm already in bed. You're going to have to call an Uber or a cab. An Uber for 5 kids all the way out here in the county. That's going to cost a fortune. Mom, don't be so cruel. What's cruel is only remembering I exist when you need to use me. Roadside assistance is handled and paid for. The rest is on you to figure out as parents. I hung up the phone and switched it to Do Not Disturb. My heart was pounding, but I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. I had helped them, but I hadn't sacrificed myself to do it. It was the ultimate final proof to myself that I was truly free. A year later, I was sitting out in my backyard again. It was springtime, the flowers were blooming, and the sun felt warm on my face. Life had found a new, healthy rhythm. Jason and Chloe had learned how to survive without me. They had no other choice. It hadn't been an easy transition for them, but through the grapevine, I heard Jason had picked up a second job, and Chloe was running a much tighter ship at home. The toxic dependency was dead and gone. They actually visit me now. Not every single weekend, and never with the hidden agenda of dumping the kids on me. When they come over, they bring a pie and stay for a couple of hours. The relationship is a bit more surface level than it used to be, but it is deeply respectful. Chloe never once dared to dictate how I spend my time again. The kids come over for an afternoon here and there, but only when it's explicitly planned ahead of time. I genuinely enjoy the time I spend with my grandkids now, because I know they are going to go back home at the end of the day. I'm no longer exhausted. I'm no longer being used. I am finally just Grandma. I looked back at my house. It belonged entirely to me again. The locks were changed, the cabinets were stocked with my own favorite things, and my bank account was completely stress-free. I didn't need to hire lawyers or have some massive screaming match in court. All I had to do was stop putting their convenience above my own life. My son's threat that I would grow old and weak without their help didn't scare me anymore. I had learned how to rely entirely on myself. I took a sip of my water and closed my eyes. Sometimes letting go is the ultimate act of self-love. When people only value you because you are useful to them, you just have to stop being useful. Only then do you get to see who actually sticks around. I smiled. Life past 60 wasn't the end. For me, it was the real beginning. And this time, I was writing all the rules myself. Sometimes you don't even have to raise your voice. You just have to stop being available. She didn't lose her family. She just lost the role where she constantly had to pay help and suffer in silence.